We're going to call the May CV Board of Directors meeting to order. Start with public comment. Seeing as nobody's here, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is approval of the minutes. Hopefully y'all had a chance to look over those. Entertain a motion to approve or any adjustments.
So moved. Second.
Motion for Mr. Combs and a second Mr. Platt. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to the vouchers. Any questions on those or any motions to approve?
So moved.
Second. Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to monthly reports for each department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's always good to give a positive report. Finances are not only strong for the month, but they're strong for the year. Dusty, if there's anything you want to say, now's your time to shine.
I'll be brief. In March 2025, the average temperature was approximately 1.3 degrees lower compared to March 2024. This led to an increase in sales and a net margin of $343,241 for the month for the electric department. The electric department continues to surpass forecasts for fiscal year 25 by $1,724,983. Any questions about electric? Water and Sewer Department also had a successful month in March, achieving a net margin of $22,438. This brings our year-to-date total to $550,232. And then also just a real quick pension update. We had our quarterly pension review on May 5th. Greg Fay, Todd Loggins, and I met with Bob Cross and Austin Robinson from USI for our quarterly pension review. In December, the board approved the transfer of pension trustee custodial services from Truist Bank to Charles Schwab Bank. This process was completed in April, and thanks to the efforts of USI and Schwab, it was a very smooth transition. USI also updated us on the plan's performance, which yielded a 10.29% return for 2024. Noting that the most significant contributor to the plan's performance was large cap growth. A review of the funds that make up the portfolio has been marked as hold by USI's research team, which is a strong rating, and no changes are recommended at this time.
Yeah, hold in this market is strong. Yeah. Okay.
And Dusty, the change to Schwab has saved us a lot of money. Do you have any idea?
I think it's going to save us about at least $15,000 per year on the portion.
Custodial fees?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're very pleased with that, and very easy to work with.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that was a good move, but it was designed to be a good move, but we wouldn't have recommended it to you. That's all you have, is that right? That's all we have, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions or discussion on monthly reports? Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. That takes us to project status reports.
My partner has apparently determined that his family is more important than this board meeting. His daughter is graduating college, and he felt it appropriate to go down there for the graduation, which has disappointed us all. So that's left me to share with you the project status for electric. We're tracking two projects that we're working on, and we have completed now 100% the 795 aerial cable on Buffalo Road. That project went well and is now completed, and we completed it ahead of schedule. The project on Harold Lane is also going very well, and we expect it to complete that by the end of this fiscal year. So unless there are any other questions on electric, I'm going to ask the Director of Water and Sewer to discuss the downtown streetscape project and the Miller Road project on the water and sewer projects.
Go ahead.
The utility contractor has completed the installation of the dig and lay portion of the sanitary sewer line along Freddie Fagan Way on Market Street. If you notice, they cleaned up everything for the antique festival over the weekend and stuff, and didn't work on Friday. They also laid the water line along Market Street, Cullum, and Commerce. They're in the process of that. They actually pulled off the job because for fittings ain't delivered, so they put off the job until hopefully they'll be delivered on Thursday of next week, and they'll move back in on site to continue construction activities. So, but everything's going good. It's on schedule and stuff as far as utilities for downtown.
I'm sure the business owners were pleased that you guys worked around the antique festival. So
Got a lot of good comments about it and everything. How nice it was cleaned up and stuff. It's the feedback that I got from local store owners down there. Everything safe and everything else. Everything was saved up, barricades and fencing, everything on it. Great. The Miller Road force main, the force main has been installed along the boulevard and everything. Now we're just coordinating the tie-ins to the existing force main and the Miller Road pump station. So hopefully that'll be occurring this month, and then we'll look at testing and everything else, trying to get everything finalized on it, if everything goes well. That's all I have.
any questions on any of the project updates? All right, thank you guys. Takes us to approval of POs. Looks like we got a lift station. to look over.
We do, Mr. Chairman, it's a purchase order for a lift station at Faust Kearney. It ties in well with also the approval of the change order, and that is, Greg, if you don't care to share with them, this is a budgetary item, which we had budgeted for this year at an amount of $300,000. So essentially, what you're going to be looking at is when you tie these two together at $246,000, it's going to come in under what we anticipated last year the cost for this upgrade would be. So go ahead, Greg.
The first one is last month we approved the work order for the project. So this is the follow up to give the general manager approval to sign off on the information, the material. The first one is the bid or the cost for the material, the pump station, all the equipment, everything else for it. This is sole source. Gorman representative for Kentucky and Tennessee, you have to work through them. So this is sole source. We was able to get the pricing before tariffs came into effect. So this is a good amount, for it.
So what we're asking for is the board approval for purchase order with Southern Sales for $143,000 for the Gorman Rump lift station package for Faust Kearney.
All right. Entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right. Takes us to force main project change order number 1.
Well, what we have here, and Greg will help move forward on this if he sees I'm getting tripped up, is we've got labor associated with this change order. We needed a contractor to do that. Greg went out to try to get that, and no one is interested at a $100,000 contract to do this kind of work. So we worked with our supplier Hearst, who's always worked well with us. They're doing our Miller Road project, the 12-inch force main up at Miller Road. And under that contract, Greg asked them, and they agreed to provide the labor and the machinery necessary to put this Gorman Rump pump in at Faust Kearney. And that came in at $103,000, if I'm not mistaken, for the change. And that's really what we're looking for the board to approve the change order essentially to the Miller Road contract, which is going to be used at the Faust Kearney pump station. If that's not convoluted, I don't know what is.
Well, you're just using that as the contract mechanism.
Exactly.
Thanks.
And we're pleased and appreciative of Hearst to work with us in order to make that happen. Greg, did I miss anything on that?
No, spot on.
So I'll ask the board then to approve this change order with Hearst Excavating for $103,315.
Entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Let's get a sneak peek at the rest of this budget for FY '26, if you're ready.
What we have here is the chairman asked me to prepare a review of the budget prior to the approval process. So essentially tonight, what my efforts are is to familiarize you with the PowerPoint for what we're going to be asking approval for at our next board meeting in June. So this is nothing more than a review. And then I provided you with what I think notes, assumptions, and comments that I think would be helpful if I were sitting in your shoes. And that way you can spend a little bit of time just looking at the presentation and knowing that you've got some background and some more granular information in what I provided in both electric, water, and sewer, and budget assumptions and notes. So, to jump right in there, as they say, we'll start with electric, and that's also the first sheet that you'll look at that will be on your assumptions and notes, but it won't be necessary if you just want to enjoy the view here. By contract with TVA, we have a long-term contract. It's for full requirements, and it is, there's a lot to it. But part of that contract requires us to fulfill certain obligations as it is directed to the operational integrity, fiscal responsibility, economic health, and fiscal stability. All of these phrases are plucked right out of the contract and what we have agreed to in order to get wholesale power from TVA. So, operational integrity, the reliability and efficiency, it's easy for us. CUB is the leader in the valley for reliability and efficiency in what we do and are recognized at that. Safety, CUB has won national recognition because we prioritize the safety of our employees, our customers, and the public. We comply in compliance with all relevant laws, regulations, and any external contract obligations that we have. And we promote a culture of integrity, and we are encouraging all of our employees to act ethically and responsibly. For fiscal responsibility, we model all of our existing revenue streams to ensure we have sufficient funds to offset any escalation in operational costs. Also, we look at our capital investments and any regulatory requirements that are necessary for us to fund. The debt management piece of this, CUB continues to pay down its current low debt obligations, and that's a big deal. We're sitting at $5.6 million in debt right now, and I've tried to look that Oak Ridge, they're about half our size, and yet they've got $18 million worth of debt. 18 million. What they per customer, the debt per customer, meter customer on that is about $1,000. $1,000 per meter customer. The debt for us is less than 200, and of course we're going to be paying that down. Oak Ridge, and I'm not picking on them, but they just borrowed an additional $4 million. And on top of that, they've raised the rates by 2% to offset the debt service for the $2 million. And the $4 million is going to go to get AMI. That's the first step in their quest for technology as part of their system. Now, and that's great. That is the first step of a great big stairway. Millions and millions and a lot of time to get there. So debt management and low debt makes a difference in our ability to reinvest in our system to provide this world-class service that we do and reliability. Financial reporting, we've had we keep accurate financial records, and we've received clean audits for over 40 years. Well, 48, I can tell you exactly, we've had a clean audit. Cost management through competitive bidding and management oversight. This ensures a clear process for how we do our expenditures. All of these things we do to check the box for what we are obligated to through the oversight of TVA, who is our regulator. Economic growth, we've got a long history of leadership in economic and industrial growth. We currently support the local economy with 3 major industrial parks and will shape the new Bull Run Park. Our workforce, we cultivate that. We attract and retain talented workforce and to meet and sustain the complex technology necessary for long-term reliability, grid stability, and the cost savings associated with our demand response. Financial stability. We continually update our electrical system operational model to forecast and target future capital needs and identify funding requirements and sources. Now, I looked this word up. Hydrometeorological conditions. I love that word. It doesn't flow easily off the tongue. But every electric system has been impacted by extreme weather events, heat waves, winter vortexes, tornadoes, wildfires, and floods. I mean, we've all experienced that. We may have a storm tonight. I've got a text from TVA, so we're under a watch. We have personnel and procedures literally in place, staged at different places on our system. So if we have a major event, and since we're spread out over so many counties, 1,500 miles of line, some places take over an hour for us to drive to from here. We've got equipment staged in different locations in order to where when we're out there, we identify, a pole is down or we've got a transformer. Instead of sending the windshield all the way back here to get it, we've got equipment staged. We've got documentation already in play for when we have major outages. How do we handle that in terms of our fleet management? Who do we call, numbers to call, and then whether or not it goes through a series, we've got to order food, or do we have to cook food here, provide a place for recovery for our people if they're working 36 and 48 hours straight, we got to provide rest, and can we provide the food? All of that we try to document before we're in the middle of an event. We have communication equipment off-site to where if our whole system is down, if this building was targeted, how can we communicate out with our customers? We've literally taken the full communication, and it costs a lot of money to do this. We've got it about 7 miles away from here to where ideally we can be up in 2 hours or less back in communications to communicate with everyone, including our customers, to do that. So all of that is we're as prepared as I know how to be. So when we look at what we're obligated for, integrity, responsibility, economic health, and stability, we've got all of those boxes checked. I'm going to go quickly through capital outlay because we went through that last time. So this really gives you an opportunity and a reminder. Costs have really gone up 155% on some of this. We have got rates in place to handle all of that, but it's an opportunity. If you've got questions or comments carried over from last month, we can ask you. And again, in your packet, there should be a much more granular identification for the projects that we're looking to have as part of our capital outlay. But it's 7.4 million in electric. If there's no questions, I'll continue on, okay? Next in the process, because the first thing we do is capital outlay. That's the first thing. What is it that we would want to see that we are going to invest in the coming year? And that's why we put this wish list down. Everything goes, if we have sufficient funding, this is what we think we need for our system. Then we look to see if we have money to do that. So revenue and expense, that's the income statement that you're used to seeing every month. Now, we are under the authority of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC. Everything and every utility in the country is under FERC. So all of the accounts, and that's why these accountants can go anywhere they want, because every time they go to a set of books, it's the same set of books. It's the same account for at every utility, anywhere. It's all standardized. Now, we've got a manual. It's the FERC manual, and then it's got a list for everything, which we follow all of that. But just to give you an idea, this little page 8, that little paragraph down there, that's just electric sales. Those are the account numbers, and so that gives you an idea. It is comprehensive. This is a screenshot that I took right out of Dusty's trial balance. You'll recognize it, Dust. We look at every account for every month for going back for years, because we weight it differently to try to determine the way to forecast going forward. That's why, unlike most every other utility, we're able to tell you where we are in the budget year. We're so much ahead of budget, we're so much behind budget, because we essentially forecast by the month. And that way we weight those years that are closest to us, we weight those more heavily than years in the past. And that way we can pick out, well, this month we had a terrible storm. And that, so for 593 and 583, those distribution expenses, we'll lower that, smooth it to try to show that for a typical year, because essentially we try to forecast for a typical year. So we can tell you, this is why it's up, or this is why it's down, because there's an anomaly that would come in to affect the budget. But this is what the process we go through month by month for years, and then weight the data from that at a different level depending on how recent it was. So we now are forecasting the proposed budget for 2026, fiscal year ending June 30th, 2026. And we are forecasting a reduction in sales because we had such a tremendously favorable year for weather. We had minimum storms, we had very cold weather in the winter that was sustained, and we had very hot weather in the summer that was sustained. So if you look at what the 87 million for 2024, we're forecasting 89 million for 2026, even though we're coming off 92 million for fiscal year 2025. That's what we forecast because we only have data through February. So then we are now pushing March, April, May, and June, and we push that out to project what we think we'll see by the end of this fiscal year 2025, and we're looking at almost 93 million. We think that's high, and that's why there is a reduction in the forecast in the operating revenue. And anybody can stop me at any time because there's a lot of information that I'm just going to roll until I see somebody go, hey, wait. The other operating revenue, the only thing I draw your attention to is the rent of electric property. You see a reduction in that. And the question is, well, what's rent? We charge a fee to attach to our poles. So all of the telephone companies, all of the cable companies, everybody that attaches to a CUB pole has to pay a pole attachment fee. And every 5 years, normally every 5 years, we'll go out and we will count with the cable company or with the telephone company to do a physical count, because the way we charge them is all the new additions. They have to give us a plat because they're going to put poles here. AT&T is going to put all the poles in the subdivision because they're trying for parity. The difference between where we're attached on them and where they are attached on us is $2 million, essentially, between Comcast and between the telephone companies. So every 5 years, we'll go out there and we'll do a physical count to true that up. Well, 5 years ago, we started the count, and they had their guy out there with us, and that guy, sweet fella that he was totally blown away on drugs. So they had to let him go, and they determined we'll just keep the same count that we had 5 years ago.
I thought you were joking about drugs, but yeah.
That's 100% true. So we essentially haven't had a physical count now in 10 years, which serves us because if they send in a plat for poles and they don't actually put them out, they're still getting charged. And that's why I'm thinking there's going to be a reduction of about 2% when that actual count comes in. So that's just fun facts to know. So our operating revenue, we see at the end of 2026 is about 92.5 million, which is a reduction from where we currently are at 95. The good news is when you have less KW consumption, you have to pay less to TVA for that KWH. So it corresponds because we're looking at a more typical year than what we've been at, but again, more than what I saw in actual in fiscal year 2024, about a 3.65% reduction in what we pay TVA for power. And of course, all of that is tied in with the cost savings that we're getting out of our virtual power plant. So electric sales less power costs gives us about 24.5 million that's going to offset our operating expenses. And we see about a 4.79% increase. That's what we're forecasting. We're planning for that kind of an increase. We try to be conservative on the revenue. We try not to be that conservative on the potential expenses because we don't know what kind of storms that'll be associated with that. So we're preparing for an increase. We've got an increase of about 5% in our maintenance expense. That also accounts for a potential storm. At 5.9 million, it doesn't take much to jump all of that up. But we're looking for almost 6.2 million in total maintenance expense. And depreciation expense, that's pretty much, it is what it is, because we can calculate that well depending on the assets that we have. It's pretty much straight line. We're looking for, Rob would interest you, for in lieu of tax, because we went through a redistribution that lowered the rate, but now we're not doing that. So we're looking for maybe as much as a 4.5% greater in lieu of tax burden, which will impact all of the taxing agents that we associate with the counties as well as the cities. But the lion's share of that will go to Clinton. So 4.24% increase in total other expense. Operating income, 2.1 million. We had other income, which is generally interest on funds that we have. We're forecasting a reduction in that interest because of rates. We're looking at a potential rate reduction. And then the interest expense is part of that is what we pay for deposits, interest on deposits, and also interest on debt, what is this, about $160,000 for our debt this year. So that's going to leave us net income of $2,043,000, which is very healthy any way you look at it. That's what we are forecasting. So now we know what we want to spend in capital outlay. We know what we think we're going to get in revenue. We have prepared them for what we think our expenses are going to be that's associated operating and maintenance. And now we have net margin, which we want to be positive, of over $2 million. The next thing we look at, first, is there any questions on that? Because we're rocking and rolling, are we not? The next thing we look at is, with all of that, do we have the funds available to meet this capital outlay after we look at revenue and expense associated with it? So we're looking at $10 million at the end of June 2025. Now that may seem high to you, and I'm going to take a second just to tell you that the way that's calculated is a lot of times, since the power bill is due early in the month, that traditionally we have included that as a reduction in available cash. But when it says at the end of June 30th, 2025, you really ought to put the number that you're going to have in the bank at the end of June 30th, even though a big portion of that, several million, is going to come out shortly after that. But at June 30th, 2025, Dusty says we're going to have over 10 million. I think we ought to hold him to that and see how that looks. If we calculate $115,740 we set aside for what is going to be debt service, that's our interest payment on the $5 million debt that we have. We're going to forecast a margin of $2 million that we just talked about. We add back the depreciation since it's a non-cash item, and that gives us $16.9 million available for capital outlay. Now, with that $16 million at the end of fiscal year 2026, we look at $7.4 million coming out of capital outlay, and that's going to leave us $9.4 million at the end of June 2026.
And that's still not including the 5 or 6 for purchase power in July, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And that way you really got apples and apples and oranges, because coming right out of that is going to be 5 or 6 million within a week, in July, as they say. So once we go through this process, and we're now saying, well, here we know what available funds we have after we have accounted for what we want to spend in capital outlay, and we know our revenue, and we know what our expenses are. Through our process, we always assess the necessity to recommend local rate adjustments, LRAs. Everybody looks at that, and that's based on our financial condition, our capital objectives, and guidance from suggestions from TVA, because they are oversight for us, and also our rate consultant, which is Mitchell Management Consultants. Do I need to recommend to the board rate action, essentially to meet our obligations for operation and maintenance and our proposed capital outlay? That's what we do now. TVA requires all the local power companies to follow an application process. If you want to do a rate adjustment, you have to submit, because they've got to approve. But what they do is they provide what's called a guideline amount. And they are saying, if you're within this guideline, you can raise rates however you want to do it, through whatever method you want to do it, with whatever block that you want to do it. And as long, for us, for this 2025, 2026, they've allowed $6.7 million. So we could adjust the rates $6.7 million, and TVA would approve it, essentially, is what they're saying. They'll approve more than that, but we have to go through a different level of documentation as to why we need that. So we've got a blank check out there with $6.7 million. But for us, as I want to give you comments and recommendations, our department, we think in electric, is financially strong. We've got now over 10 million in available funds and projecting a net margin of over 2 million. Our demand response so far this year through our virtual power plant has saved us $800,000 already this year, and we anticipate by the end of this fiscal year, by June 30th, that'll be over $1 million savings through our demand response and our virtual power plant. So the bottom line is, our recommendation is no rate action for fiscal year June 30th, 2026. No rate action for the next fiscal year, essentially. That's what I'll be recommending. That is what I'm recommending now. And if you agree, next month when you approve that, there'll be no rate action in the electric department for fiscal year June 30th, 2026. So, questions on any of that? Went through that pretty fast.
That was great.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
Ready for water and sewer?
We're ready.
All right. Although we are not required, we go through the same standards that we apply in the electric department to the water and sewer department. Operational integrity, fiscal responsibility, economic health, and financial stability. But I'm not going to go through all that with you, but I'm just telling you, all of those boxes are checked because that's the same prism that we do for both electric that we're required to do and water, which we are not explicitly required to do. Capital outlay. We went through it last month. This is an opportunity. If you reviewed that, I just want you to know we've taken into account the 55% bump in pre-COVID and actual. So I'm just opening the floor if you got comments about capital outlay, because in your packet you will find again much more granular background on every project that we're working with, and it should provide you with that information. But we're looking at a $4.6 million capital outlay for our water and sewer department. Now we know what we want. Now we're trying to determine that we have the revenue and net out of expenses to get a margin with depreciation in order to pay for it. So, just like electric operating revenue, we are anticipating, and again, we try to be conservative. We're hoping that the industry is going to pick up a little bit, but I'm telling you, that is the forecast. It is a challenge because I don't know what the world economy is going to do with these tariffs and how that's going to impact a supply or how it's going to impact material. But we're looking for about a 2% increase overall in our water and sewer sales through growth and through what we're looking for is an increase most specifically in our industry and commercial. So, other operating revenue is next to nothing. It doesn't matter. It's very small, $100,000. But we're now got $6.5 million in the operating revenue for fiscal year ending 2026. Our expenses, we're looking at a 2.7% increase in expenses. We feel like that is a good and solid number because our projections for 2025 already had a lot of operating and maintenance associated with that. So we think with a 2.7 over what we project for 2025, we should be right in the ballpark with that. Interest income is taking a big hit because we have a lot of cash that's invested. We believe with the now expenditures within and how quickly we spend that money as to how much it's going to impact our ability to invest and get a return on that investment. But we want to account for what I believe is going to be a significant reduction of over 20% in our interest income. So that leaves us a total of $252,000, which essentially adding back to our difference between our expenses and our operating revenue, we're going to have net margin of 299,000 that represents the net income for water and sewer projected for fiscal year ending 2026. The capital contributions are essentially the streetscapes. When we get some type of a bond grant reserve back from the city on what we're putting in to the streetscapes. So that's over 1.8, almost 1.9 million, right, Greg?
That's correct.
So that's a $2.3 million net change in net assets, but the number that really counts is the 299,000, which is net income before these capital contributions. So questions on the revenue expense statement? All right, moving forward. Now we see, where do the funds line up? We know what we want. We know how we're going to pay for it. Is it sufficient? And that's where the forecast for available funds. At the end of June next month, we're looking for about 6.4 million in cash available to address our capital outlay contributions of 2,060,000, and our net margin, which we're looking at 299,000 plus 1.2 million in depreciation, which is a non-cash item. That's going to give us available funds of over 10 million for this capital outlay of 4.6, and we'll look at the end of June 30th, 2026 at 5.4 million. So feeling real good about our ability to address these major projects. We are under the Tennessee Code. They've established a Tennessee Board of Utility Regulations as T-Board, and we know some of the good people on that board, but that is to ensure that the water, wastewater, and natural gas systems, the smaller utilities, not electric, have justifiable and reasonable rates. And they really needed this because historically that has not been well regulated, and you have got some tremendous abuses have been in that. And there's the state says, no, we're going to have a better handle on how this stuff rolls out. So what we are is we are also under this board, and if we didn't charge sufficient rates, or if we charge too much in our rates, they would come and we would have to justify that. Essentially, that's where that goes. So when we look at our responsibility for rate action, we do the same process that we did in electric. How much are we forecast are we going to bring in? What are our expenses associated with that? What capital outlay do we have to offset those cash reserves? And do we have sufficient reserves going forward? So with that, we say revenue stream. And that's what they would be looking at to us, what revenue stream we have. With electric, and you're looking at, near $100 million, it doesn't take much to get a lot of money. Water and sewer is a lot different. $1 gives us $6,000 more a month in water. Not a whole lot going on there. So they say revenue streams. The big revenue streams historically have been, according to MTAS, say funding sources for water and sewer are essentially through what they call user charges, which is what do you use? It's what sales are do you have, and tap fees, service fees, penalties, or late charges, and surcharges. We have all of these things except for tap fees. And they go on to say, in establishing tap fees, cities should consider that the new customer developer is connecting to an existing plant system for which they have shared no cost. To this extent, according to MTAS, it says tap fees must include more than just the cost of to the utility for the physical installation. And I put in there, AKA tap impact fees. That's what they're talking about. Now, and I went and looked all of the surrounding utilities for us. it averages over $2,000 a tap. Over $2,000 a tap for water and sewer. This was good as of last month. We don't charge anything for tap fees. And that makes a difference. It certainly does make a difference to development and should. For we were held up as the Lenore City was the city on the hill, and something that we should aspire to be like. But as we compare Lenore City to CUB, if you were going to develop in Lenore City as opposed to doing a subdivision within the city of Clinton, our fee per lot up front is $400. Lenore City's fee per lot is $4,420. Not only do they charge tap fees, they charge assessment fees, they charge maintenance fees, inspection fees, and all of that has to be paid as soon as you lay the plat down for approval. You got to write a check. Every lot, $4,420. So if you were going to build 20 lots, a 20-lot subdivision, you'd have to pay them $88,400, and at Cub you pay $8,000. So that's 10 times what you pay. So anyone would say, if you're going to develop, and it's in terms of water and sewer, my gosh, it's a big difference. Now, when we look at our friends up at the villages at Hines Creek, up on Miller Road, that's 243 lots. That's $1,074,000 if you'd have built that on LCUB system. Building that in the city, if that was in the city, it would be $97,860. $976,000 more. That's enough to make you want to move if I was developing. So all that to say, where we stack up with our ability to attract development, because again, that's LCUB. It's over $2,000 just in tap fees for everybody else, where we don't charge anything. They're charging tap fees, averages over $2,000. It's a big difference. And then when you put our rates to that, which if you're developing, that's not the big issue, but if you're living there, it is a big issue. We are less than half of what the average is in our region. I mean, if you whatever 5,000 gallons is the average, is what the state says, which isn't really low because my son can use 5,000 gallons in one shower, but it's 145% more, greater than what you would pay at CUB. We charge $61.40 for 5,000 gallons. Lake City or Rocky Top charges $150 for that. Oliver Springs charges $149. Hallsdale Powell charges $147. Harriman charges $134. Knoxville charges $131. We charge $61.40. So it's the best rate anywhere. And we win awards. We won awards for our water and sewer. So I'm saying no tap fees, $400 per lot for development as opposed to $4,400 plus, 10 times more, and the lowest rates anywhere. And in addition to that, we haven't raised our rates but 3 times in the last 15 years. We have no debt and haven't had debt for 14 years. Our friends in Oak Ridge, who we love, they've got about 12 or 13,000 customers in water and sewer. They're $55 million in debt. $55 million in debt. Their P&I for this last year, 2024, was over $1 million. Now you can see, if you put that into our rate structure, if we had to service that debt, what would our rates be? And how much of their rate goes just to service the debt? They they're under TDEC order. Norris is been under TDEC order. KUB's been under TDEC order. I don't know. Do you know of a utility around us that has not been under TDEC order? I don't know of one. We've never had a TDEC order. We've never paid a fine. They've all paid fines. And they got to get their stuff squared away because they've never maintained it, you know. And their rates are over twice what we are here. So, all that to say is our ratepayers benefit from less than half of the regional rate, and we're sitting strong with over $6 million in available funds. So the recommendation for the board that I'm going to be giving you for the budget is no rate action for fiscal year 2026. So that's pretty much what I've got. If you've got a question, I'll be able to answer it. But the takeaway is we're doing well, and we're not asking that you address any local rate action.
Thank you for the preview and for going through it ahead of time for us. I know it takes a lot of work to put all this stuff together, but
Well, the fun part was what you got in your hand, because that way it's a reference document too, because who can remember all that?
right. Maybe Dusty.
So, have you done a comparison with the electrical rates per development with others, the same as you did water and sewer there, because that was really good. I'm just wondering how we stack up with the other local utilities
See,
in electrical.
so yes, and that's a good question, because what you're talking about, if you're going to do a development, we don't charge anything for if you're going to put poles up. If it's overhead, you see, if it's overhead, you're going to be in good shape. If it's underground, we charge the difference between what's overhead and what's underground. If you are going to require that we have to build out to you, then it's depending on the size of your subdivision, the percent of what that is going to cost as to how much you can recoup from that. We have a rebate for if you're going to put in underground. So if you build out within 5 years of what you say you're going to do, you know, you can recoup all of that difference 100% back. So the most desirable request when we went through this process was you don't have a rebate, and we want to have a rebate. So you did. The difference is we modeled it mirrored Lenore City. The problem is you have to pay under their rebate system. You've got to pay for the transformers. Under our system that we had before, you didn't. So there is that variable depending on what those transformers cost, because when we gave you a price up front, it stayed that. When you're doing a rebate, it's whatever the transformers cost at the time that you purchased them, which went really bad for our friends up the road there, because they waited for 4 years, and then they're buying pad mounts in the middle of this supply chain problem, you know. Now, in terms of cost, we're all buying for the same dime from TVA. So the wholesale cost is the same. The only difference is the retail cost, and that makes a difference by really customers a mile a line. You know, if you've got Turkey Creek, you know, and you've got 30 poles that serve Turkey Creek, and your return at KWH is sky high, you're going to be able to make a lot of money with a minimum investment, because we're strung out all over 6 counties and with over 1,500 miles of line. So we're rocking maybe 16 customers per mile. Oak Ridge, on the other hand, is probably at 52 customers per mile of line. So their distribution and maintenance expense should be lower because of the density of what they do. So really, rates are based on wholesale, which are the same for everybody. And the only distinction is what you're able to do in terms of maintenance and operations. And because we've got a virtual power plant, we're over $1 million a year in reduction in that cost because that comes right off of the TVA power bill. So without that, everything would be $1 million more.
Any other questions? Comments?
Is this the whole budget? So this is what we vote on right here.
Yes, sir.
We,
What you'll get next month is you'll get a booklet. Because every year you get a booklet, that will have everything wrapped up and put in that booklet. So, but this is my best effort to give you everything you need to get an understanding of the process that we go through and how everything fits together. You know, and we're all trying to get to, do you have sufficient reserves, cash, and a revenue stream to offset capital outlay and the projected expenses associated?
I'm new at this. I'm just trying to understand the process. So we'll get no more information next month because we vote on it next month.
That's
right?
right.
Is it a 2-reading budget like the cities?
No.
Or it's a 1-reading budget.
Yes.
Okay. We do something maybe different, but we vote on the salary increase percentage. Is that anywhere in this right here?
No, there is a, we go through a process for a COLA. And what we do is we look at the industry associated with that. And we also look at local, you know, what's local. The difference between the city is it's a fund balance, and you've got to stick within your budget. You get allocated so much. This is more of a projection because if you run out of what you've allocated for storms in April, you can't tell that person wait till July 1 before we come out because we run out of money. So it's more of a projection, you know, and we're gathering that information. You know, we're not unionized, and we've worked hard to provide an environment where unions, although they literally go to the job site, stop, bring donuts to our boys as they're out there working, because they're always pressing to try to get inroads. So when you look at the Ridge, when you look at the Plateau, I don't know where Rockwood is, it's LCUB union also.
LCUB.
You know, so I mean, all around us, they're all union. So we try to provide a rate that is comparable to what the unions are doing, so our boys don't feel like they're being underpaid. I know that what Plateau is at 6 this time, and what I don't know, Cleveland, we're still Rockwood. Do you have any of that number?
Rockwood was 4
Mhm.
is what they're proposing.
But in these projections, is there not an assumed salary increase?
We always use 4% because our workforce goes up and down. Greg, do you have yours filled yet?
No,
You haven't had yours filled since you've been here.
not pretty much.
Got you.
So
Now, does that include that 4%? Is that including pension, 401k, insurance? Is that just set salary going up 4%? assumption?
well, we try to calculate everything in that budget that we anticipate.
But the 4% you mentioned, is that just base salary?
4% is what we're looking at as a COLA. That's correct.
Okay.
And I think that will probably, you know, I think the city's doing 6, right? And they did 6 last year.
Yeah, we're trying to catch up. I forget the exact, I'll have to check on that, the exact number. This is the last year where we mandated so much to try to catch up.
Yeah, I think it's 6. It
Yeah.
was 6 last. I know it's 6 this, and I think that's right.
Does everybody get the same rank and file? Does everybody
No,
get the 4%?
but by and large they do.
But does the supervisor get a pot of money and then they divide
No.
it up?
No, we do an employee evaluations, so every individual gets evaluated, and every individual, depending on when they come, we put them on steps because you're not worth when you start. You're not worth even after 3 months. You worth more than you were on the day you started. So really, we look at starting salary, then after 3 months, after 6 months, after 9 months, after 12 months, and then we go 6 months after that. So then it goes 12, it goes 18 months, and 24 months, and then after that, it goes annually, generally, depending on position. It takes 5 years for an entry-level lineman to come in, assuming he passes, because it's got classes to go through. Generally takes 5 years to get from an entry level to a journey, and there are steps associated with that. If we have a customer service person, they go through the steps, and every time there's a step, there's an evaluation, and there's a COLA evaluation in July. But it's generally no surprise to anybody if they don't get it, because they're already on the bubble. You see, if they're not doing satisfactory work, then they're not going to see any increase at all. But they're going to be told why they're not doing the satisfactory work and what they have to do to get to be satisfactory.
But if the salary pool is X, this budget will include 4% on X.
Yes, but it won't be a definitive number.
Okay.
And that's why we just use 4%.
So it could be less.
It could be less. It could be more.
Well, how? I'm just confused. How would we vote on a budget if you don't know that? If we're not
You're,
budgeting that number?
I assume you're approving I assume what you're asking for discretion, Greg, is we approve a bottom line, and
Yeah.
you allow yourself you hit those categories within those.
That's correct.
That's left up to you to manage how
Yeah,
it goes with the
which-
parameters around what the percentages are.
as a general manager of this utility and every other utility by state law, it's the general manager that hires, fires, oversees, and sets compensation for everybody under him.
Gotcha.
And then we provide, or I do, you'll see by classification what the starting salaries are, what the mid-range is, and what the top out is. And anytime anybody's got a problem with that, they need to talk to me, and I'll try to explain to them the reasoning behind what we do. Everybody has to contribute more than they take out, and we look at everything in terms of pension, in terms of benefits for hospitalization, and in terms of salary. Are you making a contribution more than what you're taking out? Because anybody that's not doing that, they're not going to stay.
Thank you.
Yes.
We approve the overall budget. He administers it. The only salary that we approve is his.
And is that approved next month as well, or?
We've been doing that at the next month, not the general budget, but
Well, see, we used to do the budget this month, so it'll be June. It'll be next month when you'll address my salary.
I don't even know what the salary is. How do we?
we address it by COLA plus or COLA minus or COLA as opposed to an absolute number.
Is that information that you can provide to us, Greg?
Absolutely.
That'd be helpful.
The good news is, I'll provide you anything you want.
So we approve the general budget next month, and in specifically your salary.
That's correct.
Okay.
And when I look at a COLA, I don't want to do anything that the board's unhappy with, you see. So it's not like I'm an independent contractor out there, So when I say, here's what we're looking at for, the employees of CUB. I don't even like to call it a COLA because it's not an entitlement. You know, it's an annual adjustment, and we look at that. But you know, if I were to try to give you a number, that is so great. That thing just goes firing off. If I were to give you a number, you know, it's not going to be 6%, and it's not going to be 5% either. You say, you know, so it's going to be somewhere south of 5. If I had to pick something out of the sky tonight, unless there is something different, we get more of this, it will be between 3.5 and 4. That would be that. That's my best shot at what I'll be authorizing my staff to provide as an annual adjustment, depending on, again, the evaluation. Anybody that gets unsatisfactory gets immediate the next month they get evaluated, because I like to tell them what it is that brought them down to this unsatisfactory position, and then what do you need to correct that, and then give them no more than a month to do it, or less if I see they're not doing anything at all, because I don't want anybody here working unsatisfactory. Now there are things. Our next step is needs improvement. You can't go 2 evaluations with an unsatisfactory, still be working here, but you can with the needs improvement. If you need new training, if you missed your CDL, if you missed the math portion of your for a journeyman, you know, you got to get it, and we're going to give you incentive to get that done, but your rate will be held until you get that, and then when you do get it, and because I want to pay you, I want to give you the maximum that I can. We've been creative with our journeymen because we can't compete with the KUBs of the world. They fished in our pond and taken some really great people. In order to adjust to that, we've got creatively overtime, and then we looked at those great performers, and we do this annually, and it's all on a rated point. If you're available for in terms of safety, in terms of how much are you absent, are you sick, it determines on whether you make yourself available for on-call duty, you get points for that. And then so many points, you can get up to a 10% in increments of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, in addition to your base rate. But that only lasts a year, and then it all drops back down to 0, and you have to have those points again in order to get that. Now, we don't have maybe 3 that get a 10, you know, but we get probably 15 that get at least 2 on top of that. So the major performers that provide that level of value to us, then we are able to compensate them, because all journeymen are not the same.
Thank
you. Any other budget questions, comments? All right, thanks again for the info and early look. Takes us to other business.
The only other business is I'm going to tell you I'm going to be out of pocket for the next few days. My granddaughter is 7. I will be celebrating with her, and I'm looking forward to that. But I'm available by cell phone 24/7.
Thank you. Enjoy that time with her. Be good.
It's better to call me late at night than it is early in the morning, by the way. Just passing that information on.
Yeah.
We know you'll be up talking to TVA early in the morning, so why not?
That can you believe that? But you know, I mean, I take a little pride. His first day as CEO of TVA, and the first call he makes was with me, and I didn't pick it up, which is pretty impressive. It's because So we've got that squared.
Rob, you have anything?
Yeah, one last thing. We mentioned the fire hydrants last time, and they did some, Fire Chief Little did some investigation. Please pass those down. And again, we know this is not something that's going to happen overnight, but we want to be good partners, the CUB and Clinton. And there's a few of the reds. If you look on the
The
second
4
one,
inches.
Yeah, and we know that, you know, this is digging up the line, et cetera. So just, what we ask is to work together with Chief Little while we're in the area maybe and fix things. The one, I think the ones that are, it's not grayed out, but the ones that are highlighted are in one particular neighborhood. Looks like there's
Jarnigan and West Broad.
Ford red tops. And again, Chief Little thinks the best thing is try to fix the red tops. That's the highest priority. So that it's mainly that neighborhood and about 3 down from it. But anyway, I told him I'd pass this along and
Let
maybe
me
Greg,
ask
maybe
you
you and Jeff could meet or something and just we all know this is a long range plan. This is not something that's going to happen next year.
Let me ask you. Historically, we don't put 4-inch in.
Yeah, I know it's the
Yes, yeah. Man, things were different then too. I don't even know how long they've had the steamers going. You know, they were glad to get the garden hoses, if nothing else. We are ready. We're not reluctant. We're not a reluctant dance partner. We're ready.
Right.
You see, for water, our operating income is $23,000. Thank heavens for the interest income that we have coming in. So the question would be, and we would do this anytime we're going to abandon and put new line in, it will never be to where they won't be able to hook into that thing because we're not. I told them that we're not putting 4-inch in ever. It's just material cost. The difference. It makes no sense. But to proactively say, let's go out there and just change this stuff out. All I'm saying is, for that to happen, then we would need a grant money. We would need somebody other than the ratepayers funding that. You see?
Totally agree. We just want to be good partners,
And we will be
and
good
as
partners.
things go forward, if
We-
there's opportunities.
Anytime we see that oh well, we've got to upgrade the sign, which is what we do. That's what we're doing in the streetscapes.
Yeah.
Because we see that opportunity every time we're out there putting new line in. It will always be able to accommodate the fire all the time. You know,
Thank you.
but I don't want to mislead you that and say, yeah, sure. Proactively, Rob, we can't afford to go out and spend what little that we have upgrading a system that will not provide 1 more cent of revenue into the utility, yet provide this additional fire protection unless we get some grant money associated with that. And the city, if this, which is what they've done out there on David Road, Lane or whatever that is. I mean, that was what, $30-some thousand. As the city sees the need, and if they've got the funds to support that, then we'll work with them to minimize the cost to get it at the absolute lowest dollar in order to provide that additional service. But yes, the answer is yes. Will we work with Chief? We will. And if he's got a 911 out there, and then we can support him in his efforts to try to get Roger to let loose of a few $1,000s in order to enlarge a water line, man, we're all about it. And we will give him what we call the in-house deal if there's labor that we can provide to get it done.
Thank you.
That's good. Thanks for bringing that up, Rob. Anything else, Rob?
No.
Steve? No. Steve? No. David? The only thing that I wanted to add, this is a quick one, I promise. I know everybody's ready to go. Training. What's our training deadline minus Rob? Because I know that he's got a different.
There is been some changes in that. Have you shared that information yet?
No, I haven't. So recently, the Tennessee legislation voted that so anybody that comes onto the board first time serving must complete 12 hours of training within their first 12 months of service. Then, beginning the calendar year after you complete that first year of training, so starting on January 1st, in the next 3 years, it used to be you had to complete 12 hours of training total over that 3-year period. They just reduced it to 6 hours over that 3-year period. So, Stephen, you for an example, your year just started January 1st. So you've got 3 years to complete 6 additional hours of training.
I thought we were annual for some reason. That's what
Can you send us kind of an update on, like, I mean, like, probably, we've been on, Steve and I've been there, I just need to find out where I'm at, so I know what I need, how much I need to get again,
Sure
We
can.
can get together.
please.
That was all I had. All right,
Yeah,
entertain
we'll do
motion
it. Sounds
to adjourn.
good.
That's my motion.
Yeah, you make a motion, anybody
I
second?
won't be back.
Second. All right, meeting's over.
Hey.